Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here to present to you a little bit, something a little bit different than I guess you're used to. So what we are going to do here today is to try to convince you that tissue engineering is going to be the medicine of the future. And in order to do that, we need to sort of go through several steps. Why should we be doing tissue engineering? How should we be doing tissue engineering? And what does the future hold for us? If we start in the beginning and we look at these three graphs on this picture here, as you can see. So this is the age curve. This is how things were in the 1950s. This is how things were in the are going to be in the 2050. And as you can see, when you look at those curves, the number of older people is going to increase and increase and increase. So what we are going to be facing is a lot of old people. And I'm not saying it's bad they're going to have a lot of old people, because old people can be interesting. But in general, it's going to be very expensive to maintain all these old people. Now, if we look at ways to do that, one way we could potentially maintain those old people is by organ transplantation. But the problem with organ transplantation is the classical aspect of supply and demand. When you look at, for example, kidney transplantations, and the blue line you see is basically, so these are American data, the blue line are people waiting for a kidney, while the red one is the line where people actually have received a kidney. And in between, we have this big gap. So we're not going to be able to fulfill this gap by getting more people to donate organs. Even though the rules and regulations are being more or less restricted now, when we're getting more people to donate organs, we're still never going to be able to bridge this gap by getting people to donate organs. So how do we do this? How can we maintain our body? How can we make the old people look interesting and dancing around like this, but not, listening to UTmessan and complaining? What can we do? Well, these are three options that we have. One thing is to do diagnostic, to do early diagnostic. This is, for example, what DCOT has been sort of emphasizing, is that can we use genetic information to do earlier diagnostics, and if we can do earlier diagnostics, we can maybe tackle the medical problems earlier with a less cost. So that's one option. Second option, which is not one of my favorite, is prevention. We should drink less, we should exercise more, we should eat healthier. I don't do any of those things. So that's another option. So the option that I like is actually, instead of doing these early diagnostics, instead of eating healthy and drinking less, we just regenerate ourselves. We do like the starfish. If you cut off one limb of the starfish, it regrows. So this is what we are going to do, hopefully, in the future. Now, this is not new. So tissue engineering has theoretically been around for decades, for eons. And this, on top of the picture, you can see here. So this is Prometheus. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of Prometheus, but Prometheus, what he did, that he stole the fires from the god and gave it to the mankind. Now, what the gods did, as usually gods do, they're very vengeful and they punish people. So they took Prometheus, they bound him to a rock, and they got an eagle to come in, and the eagle would peck at his liver every day for eternity. And the eagle would come, peck at the liver, and then once the eagle was full at the end of the day, the eagle would go away, but then the liver would regenerate. And this is what we want to do. We want to try to regenerate tissue. We don't want to pack up at Prometheus' liver, but we want to be able to do this. We also know historical, well, maybe not historical, but more like literature facts. We all know this guy here. So this is Frankenstein's monster. And Frankenstein's monster was basically just taking organs, taking pieces of organs from dead people, putting them all together. But then, unfortunately, they took a brain, probably from an Icelandic banker, and put it into him. And then we were left with this. But this is not what we are going to do either. We're going to do something that looks more like this. Now, this picture looks horrific. When I ask my students, what do you feel when you see this picture? Some of them say, I feel horrific. Other ones say, I see innovation. And this is what I see when I look at this picture. I see innovation, but not the horrific part of seeing an ear on the back of a mouse. Now, if we go and look at tissue engineering, and this is why one of the reasons why I was drawn to tissue engineering, it's a multidisciplinary field. I, as a biologist, I cannot do tissue engineering on my own. I need the help of engineers. I need the help of people with material background, electrical engineering, computer sciences, cell biology, biochemistry, chemical engineering, biomedical engineering, like Paulo. And this is what makes tissue engineering so interesting. Now, there are still some fundamental criteria we have to keep in mind if we are going to use tissue engineering for clinical medicine, and these are just 3 of them, which I'm going to cite now. When we are ready to implant or use this tissue engineering for the clinical patient, it has to be of sufficient size and mechanical integrity, meaning it has to work, it has to function. It also has to have the biomechanical and biochemical function. So not just enough that it works on the mechanical level, it also has to work on the biological level. And the third thing, once you have put it into the human body, it has to mature and has to integrate with the surrounding tissue, meaning it has to become a part of you. So this picture here sort of shows you in very brief what the problem is and how we can tackle some of these problems. And as you look at this picture, we are going everywhere from using what I call scaffold, and this is biomaterial science, down to the cells. We're talking about spatial temporal patterning, we're talking about molecules, we're talking about perfusion, and this is very important because if you take a tissue engineering construct, you put it into a human being, if there's no formation of blood vessel, if there's no perfusion into the construct, it's not going to survive. It's just going to necrose, it's going to die. And we need to develop ways to monitor those tissue engineering constructs while we are creating them. And we need to be able to create them. And that's what we are going to talk to you about today. And this is what Paolo is going to show you, because Paolo is the engineer, I'm the biologist. I can work with the cells, I can work with the biochemistry, I can work with the chemistry, but fortunately, I'm also blessed to having a good colleague like Paolo who can do the engineering part, the computational part. Now, the next picture I'm going to show you is the dream. So this is the way I would say we should be doing tissue engineering, but we're not there yet. And that's organ printing. Now, this is kind of a Star Trek-esque kind of thing, is that basically what you would do is just to print organs. And this funny cartoon there is basically a depiction of what you would be expecting it to look like in the operating room. Somebody comes in and there's a defect in the heart. What do? Well, you just print out on your heart and you put into the patient. But we're not there yet. We're far from being there yet. You see a bunch of videos on YouTube. There's some excellent work going on, for example, with Anthony Atala at the Wake Forest going on. But still, we're not going to be putting 3D printed organs into humans being in the near future. So what we propose, though, to do is to use bioreactors. And the reason why we want to use the bioreactors is that we want to create organs in the lab. We want to take the scaffold material, we want to take the cells, we want to put them together, but in order to get something that actually looks and works as an organ, we need to mimic what's going on in the human body. And this is what Paolo is going to tell you a little bit about now, the engineering behind the bioreactor design we have been working on over the past 4 or 5 years. So Paolo, go ahead.
Thanks, Ole. So, let's get familiar with the remote control. Actually, I try to understand the tissue engineering challenge by looking at the different elements in a kind of recipe way. So we have cells, we have scaffolds, and then we have a process that put together cells with scaffolds. We know that both the type of cells and the type of scaffolds, they depend from the different application, from the different tissue that we want to engineer. And but when we have made the decision, and some years ago we did aim of creating bone tissue, then we started to work on the different ingredients. So scaffolds, cells, seeding, and environment that can be controlled. And this can be done in a lab like in blood bank, and Ole has been doing this for years. Controlled environment, scaffolds, media that give the nutrition to the scaffold in the cells, and eventually at the end of the culture you get a tissue. So this is the static. Where comes into play the role of an engineer and the areas of development that we have introduced at University of Reykjavik is to switch from a static to a dynamic culture. So where we are trying to add to what is the normal way of doing the culture of tissue, some more physiological input. So for example, because our interest has been in bone, what a bone normally needs in terms to be healthy, it needs to be, microcirculation. I mean, a bone, it receives nutrition through the blood all the time, and also it needs a load. Imagine the people on a space, they suffer from bone density loss because their bone are unloaded. So we need to introduce these two concepts, to move from static to dynamic, to try to improve the bone formation. Then we want to create a system that receive the nutrition in a controlled environment, but additional also gets this nutrition more inside, more in a kind of perfused way, and additional receive a mechanical stimulus. Yeah, you can start with this video. So the first development that our master students in biomedical engineering did some years ago is to design with plexiglass a bioreactor. And here you see the phase where the scaffolds are inserted inside this chamber. And now they are closing the component. And this bioreactor, this let's say basic bioreactor with it design, it's now fit with media. And then we use high technology from IKEA, the milkshaker for the cappuccino, but controlled with a microprocessor. So there was some technology as well. And you see details of the perfusion taking place with the scaffold. So the first step is say, okay, we can create with some technology using a computer that control the degree of perfusion, because we have to have controls of the parameters. And that was, let's say, encouraging results to say, okay, well, we can build a bioreactor. Moving forward, then we have been introducing more sophistication and different ideas of making this a serious bioreactor, I would say. And also thanks to a synergy with the University of Bologna that they have had experience for soft tissue generation, we have started a collaboration, so thanks to PhD student that we are co-supervising between Reykjavik University and University of Bologna. And now we have this development. So here you see that the features that we introduced are, this is, let's say, the perfusion circuits. Inside here, we have the chambers with the scaffolds. Then we have peristaltic pumps that are providing a controlled perfusion. Then we have temperature controls. And then we have, of course, temperature sensors, but also an automatic change of media. Because the concept is this dynamic culture should be end-free. It means that once the scaffold is starting the culture, we should not come into touch until the end, because to avoid contamination, to avoid that the cells would be damaged. Here is another detail from another angles of the bioreactor. And very interesting, and we have spent quite some time in the development of the scaffold chamber, which we thought always to be a very essential part. It should host the scaffold tightly, but of course it gives some degree of movement, and it should, as you see, allow perfusion and allow compression. So this is CAD designed, and then we have tried, we have some experience with 3D printing, so we have made this with different materials, also thanks to the collaboration with us, until we found the final version, which is biocompatible and transparent. Another detail that I want to underline for the chamber development is the fact that they are designed to fit into multi-welter. So multi-welter is it's a matrix that hosts biological samples. So without remove the scaffold from the chamber, you can take the chamber and analyze in the lab. So this add a degree of security of not corrupting the culture even when you want to do an assessment intracultural. So that's the current development. And here is the bioreactor, which in case doesn't work as a bone generation, it can still be a nice piece of furniture in your house. And so the one thing also more technical, more close to the audience expertise, it's the computer interface. Of course, we want all those parameters to be adjustable. And so associated to the device, we have made an interface to control pH, temperature, pressure, the perfusion, and the perfusion, the gas inflow, outflow. And so we can, so the bioreactor, when it operates with two type of dynamics. One is the compression, and the compression allows 0.25 micrometers of displacement of the media up to 0.25, and the perfusion from 1 to 6 milliliters per minute. And the frequency of the perfusion is between 1 and 5 hertz. Those parameters are not obviously done randomly. They are the results of simulation and also literature review. So, I mean, what is really physiological, what is really the right way to do this, it's on development. So we want to have a range of values that we can test in order then to find protocols for dynamic culture that are optimal for the goal. So there is quite a lot of challenges for students and for us in moving both in development, computers, and of course simulation. Yeah, we have not yet create bones from this bioreactor. We just finished the technical development, and we did some preliminary assessment which demonstrate one important thing. Here is the static culture and dynamic culture, and here you can see, well, let's see, yeah. You can see that in the dynamic culture, we have cells that are underlined with these fluorescent materials. They are pushed inside. So that's one of the goals that you want to reach with dynamic culture, to try to create a homogeneous bone formation. And to do that, you have to push the cells inside. So this is encouraging results, but we are in the stage of making more trials. Now, I'd like to make some closing remarks, and thank you for your attention.
So then the question is that we proposed in the beginning, is tissue engineering going to be the medicine of the future? And of course, our answer is yes. We believe tissue engineering will be the medicine of the future, but we're still far away from it becoming the medicine of the future, even though we are a little bit closer every day. So I like to quote this song, "The future is closer than they think, but yet so far away." This is an 80s reference for young people. So now, we have to be aware of false prophets, of course. And you all are familiar with Paolo Macchiarini, not to be confused with Paolo Gargiulo. So Paolo Macchiarini, of course, if you've been monitoring the news in Iceland, is a Swiss-Italian surgeon who did put the tissue engineering into the clinics, but did it without doing the proper work before he did it. So he moved too fast. He didn't do the proper science, he didn't do the proper clinical preparations, And what happened in those cases, the patients died. And this is very important that we emphasize that once we take the tissue engineering into the clinic, we have to do it properly. We cannot rush, we have to do the science, we have to do the development. So you have to be patient. Maybe when some of you guys are old, we can create new kidneys for you, hopefully. I'm not going to promise it, but hopefully. So just to sum up there a little bit in the end, artificial intelligence is of course going to be very important in tissue engineering design. And you can see the bioreactor that Paolo showed you has a lot of these integral technical issues which need to resolve. So one thing we're also working on in my lab is we're working on trying to detect biomarkers which can tell us whether the bone differentiation or the bone formation is good or bad. And you can imagine if you had a bioreactor which could artificially use this artificial intelligence to react to these signals and then increase the bone load or decrease the bone load, increase the cell perfusion, etc. So I feel free to ask questions if you have any. I'm not sure if you can answer all these questions, especially the technical ones, but feel free to ask them. So just thank you very much for us.
So, who has the first question? Okay, over there.
I think there was somebody over there. Oh,
no. No, okay. False alarm.
If you don't ask questions, I'll go pointing like you do with the
Yeah.
students. You know,
We
so.
start over there. No, but I can maybe start. You said that maybe some of us, maybe the young people or me, or I don't know. I mean, we have different age range in the audience. Would maybe be able to use this technology when in the healthcare system. But I mean, how many years are we talking about if you know, if you are opportunistic about this? And are there other technologies that are kind of competing with this one?
It's a very good question. So every year I teach a course in tissue engineering at Reykjavik University, and every year I say we're 5 years away. So I'm going to stick with that. We're 5 years away. But I'm going to say that also next year. Now the competing ideas is that, for example, the way the Japanese are tackling the aging of their nation is with robotics, with suits that are kind of, you know, can help you walk, etc. But also people have been designing artificial kidneys, artificial pancreases, which are not biological designs, but mechanical designs. So I think those are also going to be very, very interesting to look for in the future. Because every time you go work with biology, you create problems. It's like I tell my students, as a biologist, I don't solve problems, I just create them.
Good job. Any questions? Any last question?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.